Okay, so today we're going to move on to a new topic. If you have your book, I think it's page 17 or 18. Anyway, it's the true origins. These are the causes of dukkha. So up until now, we have been talking about dukkha, which is sometimes translated as suffering, or a better translation is unsatisfactoriness. Just trying to recognize how our situation in this world and with our body and mind and all the things around us and so on, all of these are considered unsatisfactory according to Buddhism, because there's just so many troubles, so many problems, physical and mental. And the point of thinking about this is to generate the wish to be free, to get ourselves out of this situation and help others to also get out of this situation, so we don't have to continue experiencing dukkha. So to be able to do that, we need to understand its causes. Why does all this suffering happen? Where does it come from? Okay, so I'll just start reading from that section, True Origins. Because as we live amidst true dukkha day in and day out, it is our close companion, never letting us be peaceful in our own hearts or with others. So we might feel uncomfortable with that statement, because we might say, but wait a minute, there are times when I feel peaceful and happy and joyful and things are going well. So, yes, we do have times when we are not overtly suffering and we feel peaceful and happy. But then, do those times last very long? So they probably last a certain amount of time, maybe a few minutes or a few hours. But eventually, something will happen, and that peace, that happiness will come to an end. And then once again, we'll find ourselves facing some kind of problem. There's always some problem that comes along that disturbs our peace and our happiness. So, according to Buddhism, the reason for this is because we're never completely free from the causes of suffering. The causes of suffering are always there. In fact, they're with us all the time. They live with us in our minds. And so at any moment, one of those causes of suffering could ripen, erupt, and we would find ourselves experiencing a problem. So then it says, since we do not like dukkha and want to be free from it, we must seek out its causes and examine if they can be eliminated, and so on. And if so, if they can be eliminated, then we need to learn how to do that. What is the path? We call, in Buddhism, we use the word the path to be free of suffering. So the Buddha identified afflictions and karma as the source of dukkha. And we can verify this by observing our own experiences. So that's something to think about. Can we see in our own experience that afflictions and karma do bring suffering? Karma is a little subtle because we can't really see karma happening. It's not so visible. But afflictions, we can. If we watch our mind, watch our experiences, we can see how getting angry, for example, or having jealousy, or feeling depressed, these can arise in our mind, and almost immediately there's disturbance in our mind, where our mind is not peaceful and happy, but it's suffering. So, but anyway, the Buddha always did say we need to check with our own experience, our own wisdom. We need to check if what he says is true. So don't just blindly believe. So those are the two main causes of suffering according to Buddhism: afflictions and karma. And afflictions can also be called delusions, afflictive states of mind, disturbing emotions. So there's different terms that are used, but they are mental states. They are states of mind. You've heard this before. It's not something new. And so those are the main cause of suffering, because they arise in our mind, and then under their influence, we create karma. So karma only happens, especially negative karma, it only happens because of afflictions. It's the afflictions that drive us, that kind of push us to create negative karma, which then becomes the cause of suffering. So that's why it says here, karma arises from afflictions, the chief of which is ignorance. So afflictions are mental factors, states of mind, that keep us bound in cyclic existence and prevent our attainment of nirvana and awakening. So we're going to be spending probably the most of the rest of the semester looking at afflictions and learning to identify them, and also learning about methods, antidotes we can use to manage our afflictions until we can be completely free from them. That takes time. We can't immediately, quickly get rid of all our afflictions, but we can at least learn to manage them so that they aren't too strong and kind of take over our mind and take over our life and cause us to create bad karma. So then the next paragraph says, it is important to approach the topic of afflictions with a correct attitude. Avoid using the various lists of defilements to criticize yourself, thinking, I have so much anger. I am also so jealous. What a bad person I am. So this is what some people do. And it's definitely my experience. When I first started learning Buddhism, I already had the habit of kind of being self-critical, beating myself up. So then when I started learning about these afflictions and I could see them in my mind, then I would feel worse about myself than I ever did before. I would feel, oh, I'm just horrible. I'm so bad. Now, that is not a healthy attitude to have. It's not helpful. It just makes us more disturbed, more unhappy. So it says here, remember that gaining knowledge about mental defilements gives us the power to free ourselves from them and arrive at a state of true peace. We have the potential to do this. In other words, we have Buddha nature. And so we need to keep that in mind, that the afflictions, the disturbing emotions, are not permanent parts of our mind that will be there forever. They're not who we are. That's part of the problem, is the tendency to identify with them, to feel I am an angry person, I am a depressed person, I am a jealous person, as if that is our identity, who we are. But that is wrong. That is not true. We are not those mental afflictions. They are just things that come and go in our mind, like birds flying through the sky, clouds going through the sky. They're not always there. They're not permanent. And our true nature, we say in Buddhism, our real nature is like the sky, clear and pure, and not inseparably mixed with these afflictions. So we need to get more familiar with that. And it's more healthy to identify with our Buddha nature and our good qualities, our love and our compassion. Yeah, to say that's who I really am. That's how I really am, rather than the afflictions. So the next paragraph says, describing afflictions is similar to identifying the thieves in our house who have been masquerading as our friends while all the time stealing our happiness. When we know their characteristics, we can catch them, evict them, lock the door behind them so that they can never return. Okay, so that's an analogy that's actually used in the teachings, that our afflictions are like thieves that have been, in our house, stealing our things and making problems for us. But we can, learn to recognize, hey, you guys are not my friends. You are not doing good for me. You are, doing bad things. So I'm going to throw you out. And so then we can catch them, throw them out, and then lock the door so they can't come back. And it says, but unlike thieves who can regroup later once evicted, afflictions vanish completely. So the thieves that we throw out might find a way to get back into our house and again start robbing us. But in the case of the afflictions in our mind, once they have been completely eliminated or abandoned, and the way of doing that, the method for doing that is with the wisdom realizing emptiness. So once we have developed that wisdom that sees emptiness, that experiences emptiness, that is like the antidote, the ultimate antidote that will completely eliminate afflictions, like destroy them. So there's nothing left, nothing remaining, and they can never come back into our mind. So that's the meaning of true cessation, which is the third of the Four Noble Truths. The third truth is true cessation. So that's what true cessation means. It's the afflictions have been ceased forever and they will never come back. And then it goes on to say, like all other phenomena, mental defilements are empty of inherent existence. So that's not easy to understand, but one way we can understand that is that they don't exist by themselves independently because they arise from causes and conditions. So they depend on causes and conditions. So if those causes and conditions are there, then the defilements will come. But if the causes and conditions are not there, then the defilements do not arise. So I'm just going to read a little bit from this lovely book I just found in our library called How to Expand Love by the Dalai Lama. And so here, one chapter is called Basic Purity of the Mind. So he says, is it possible to get rid of problematic emotions completely? Or is it possible only to suppress them? According to a basic Buddhist insight, the mind is essentially luminous and knowing, or sometimes we say clear and knowing. So that's the real nature of our mind, clear and knowing. Therefore, emotional problems do not reside in the mind's essence, and such counterproductive attitudes are temporary and superficial and can be removed. And then it goes on to give a reason we can use to understand this. If distressing emotions such as anger were in the very nature of the mind, then from its inception, the mind would always have to be angry. Obviously, this is not so. Only under certain circumstances do we become angry. And when those circumstances are not present, anger is not present either. So that's something we can think about. If anger was a permanent, fixed part of our mind that we could never get rid of, then it should be there all the time. Anger should be present in our mind all the time. But if we investigate that, we'll probably realize, no, I'm not always angry. I don't always feel angry. It's only at certain times that I feel angry, but at other times I do not. So just looking at our own experience, we can see that anger is something that comes and goes. It's temporary, transitory. And as we've learned before with transitory phenomena, impermanent phenomena, they arise from causes and conditions. There are causes and conditions that give rise to anger. And if we can know what are the causes and conditions and work with those and eliminate those, we can eliminate the causes and conditions, then we can eliminate anger and the other afflictive emotions.
Excuse me?
Yes. Hi.
Hi. I wanted to ask, I didn't understand, because it's also, we can say that just in certain times we will feel our Buddha nature,
No,
even though it's always there, but we don't feel it all moment by
no,
moment.
I didn't. I don't know exactly what words I said, but what I was trying to say was that we should try to remember that we have Buddha nature. It's not easy to feel our Buddha nature, to actually experience it. Although it is possible, because there's two kinds of Buddha nature. So one kind of Buddha nature is the emptiness of our mind, the emptiness of inherent existence. And that's not easy to recognize. That's something quite subtle, quite hidden. So it's not easy to see that part of our Buddha nature. But another part of our Buddha nature is all our positive qualities. So we have loving kindness, we have compassion, we have wisdom, we have generosity. So these are positive qualities that are a natural part of our mind. And those are also part of our Buddha nature, because if we want to become a Buddha, we have to practice. And part of the practice is to cultivate those positive qualities, to increase our love, increase our compassion, increase our equanimity, our wisdom, and so on. So we work on increasing those more and more and more. And eventually, when our mind becomes a Buddha mind, then we have all those qualities. We have, infinite love and compassion all the time for every living being. So it's the love and compassion that we have right now at this moment, which will transform into the love and compassion of in the mind of a Buddha once we become a Buddha. So we can look at our positive qualities and then say to ourselves, okay, I do have basic love and compassion, and I can develop those more and more and more. And eventually, we'll have a Buddha's mind and have the infinite love and compassion that a Buddha has. So those aspects of Buddha nature, we can identify right now. We can recognize them now. And so I'm just trying to say that we shouldn't only look at the negative qualities of our mind, like our anger and our jealousy and our ignorance, and to think, oh, I'm just so terrible. Because that's what I used to do, in the beginning when I was first learning Buddhism. All I could see was my negative qualities. And so it was difficult to see anything positive in my mind. And that's really unhelpful. I actually got kind of sick because I was, thinking that way. And so I had to, and many other people as well, we have to learn to recognize we do have good qualities. We do have potential. We can transform ourselves. So that's what I was trying to say. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
But also, the positive qualities are empty. They are also dependent on causes and conditions.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So they are not.
They are, huh?
So they are not a real part of the Buddha nature. The empty element of the Buddha nature.
Well, everything that exists is empty. Okay, that emptiness is the nature of everything that exists, whether it's good or bad, whether it's painful or blissful, whether it's samsara or nirvana. All things, everything has emptiness as its inherent, as its real nature. But I think they say that the reason it's possible to eliminate the afflictions like anger and attachment and jealousy and so forth is because they are not a permanent fixed part of our mind. They are dependent on causes and conditions. And if we want to get rid of them, we can eliminate them by applying the right antidotes. And then we can be free of them altogether. But we don't want to get rid of our positive qualities. So our positive qualities are empty too, yes, but we don't want to get rid of those. And in fact, I don't know if it is possible, if it is even possible to get rid of our positive qualities. I mean, because let me finish. The negative qualities like anger, attachment, and so forth, they are actually dependent on ignorance. Okay, they depend on ignorance. One of the causes for having those afflictive emotions is ignorance about the true nature of things, ignorance about our own true nature, ignorance about the true nature of others. So ignorance feeds our afflictive emotions, our anger, and so forth. But our positive emotions, such as love and compassion and so forth, those are not based on ignorance. Those are based on seeing things realistically, seeing things correctly. Like, for example, everybody wants to be happy. All beings want to be happy. All beings do not want to suffer. And that's true. That's a truth. That's a fact. And if we meditate on that, we contemplate that, we get familiar with that, then that will increase our love and our compassion. Our love and our compassion increase when we think in a more realistic way, when we see things in a more realistic way. Okay. So I don't know if that makes sense, but what I'm trying to say is that the afflictive emotions like anger and so forth, they depend on ignorance. They depend on unrealistic ways of thinking rather than on wisdom and correct ways of thinking. Whereas the positive emotions like love and compassion and so on, those are based on seeing things correctly, on wisdom and correct perceptions of things. So that's why those don't disappear from our mind, but they actually grow, they increase the more we have wisdom. Whereas the afflictive emotions decrease the more we have wisdom. Then the next part says, they are transient. So this is talking about the mental defilements. They are transient like bubbles that quickly burst and have no essence, like the trunk of a plantain tree. So these are analogies that are used in the Buddhist texts that help us understand the nature of afflictive emotions. Transient like bubbles, they arise and they pass. They're not permanent and fixed. And they have no essence like the trunk of a plantain tree. So I don't know if those exist in Israel, but they existed in India. So a plantain is a kind of banana, similar to a banana. And the tree they grow on, it looks solid on the outside, but when you open it up, the inside is empty. It doesn't have any solid essence. And so that's similar to the nature of our emotions. When we investigate them, we can see that they don't have any solid essence. Yeah, I think banana trees are the same. I think if you try to cut down a banana tree, you'll find that there's nothing solid there, like an oak tree. So anyway, it says, rather than think of anger or any other affliction as a solid emotion that is always lurking under the surface of your mind, ready to explode, recognize that it exists by being merely designated. In dependence on some moments of mind that share a few common characteristics, we give it the name anger. That's all anger is. It's not a monster that is an inherent part of us. It is not who we are. We need to view our afflictions from two perspectives. On the one hand, they are the source of our misery. On the other, they lack essence and can be completely eradicated from our mind stream. So this is talking about emptiness. So anger and other afflictive emotions are empty of inherent existence. They don't have solid, independent, intrinsic existence. They're not fixed, solid things existing in our mind. So when we examine them, we investigate them, we can see that, yeah, they don't exist in that way. Like, I like this example of a monster, because I've had that experience, you know, in the past, I was really afraid of my anger. It did seem like a monster inside of me that could come out and, you know, take over me, and then I would become like a monster, like King Kong or something. But it's not like that. That's a misunderstanding, a misperception. Just some experiences that arise at certain times, and they change and then they pass, rather than something fixed and solid and permanent. So we can use our understanding of emptiness, whatever understanding of emptiness that we have, and apply that to our afflictive emotions, you know, and understand how they really exist. So next, there's a box that's talking about the different ideas about the origins or the causes of dukkha. And so different people have different ideas about suffering, where suffering comes from, what are the causes of suffering. So these are just a few ideas. You might know of others. So the first one is, some people believe that whatever happens is the will of a divine creator. Yeah, so many people believe in some kind of God, and God is the creator of everything. And so when terrible things happen, like there's a tsunami or a flood, a hurricane, fire, you know, some kind of natural disaster, people will say, it's God, it's the will of God, the will of Allah, right? This is true, right? This is what some people say. Why did this happen? Oh, it's the will of Allah, the will of God. I always have trouble with that idea. I mean, why would, if God is loving, has love for all people, why would God do such a thing? Doesn't make any sense to me, especially little babies, you know.
I have an answer.
You have an answer?
Yeah. Because according to the Judaism, so the God is not the real, he is creator, yes, but the people have free will.
Free will, yeah.
And it's like cause and condition. I think it's like the Buddhism. I mean, the thing that's happened is the the result of things that people doesn't take care of, like the Buddhism, I think, right?
Well, yeah, I have heard. Yeah, some people do believe that God created everything in the beginning, but then people have
Create
their own,
cause and condition too.
yeah, people, yeah. But then when it's something like a tsunami, for example, that terrible tsunami that happened in Southeast Asia, and I don't remember how many people died, 30,000, I think, something like that, in all these different countries in Southeast Asia. And this is what some people were saying, oh, it's God, it's the will of God. I mean, you can't really attribute that to human beings. Human beings didn't create the tsunami. It was something that happened in nature. Human beings create war. Human beings do things like war and murder and terrorist attacks, but something like a tsunami or hurricanes, difficult to see how that, or earthquakes. Earthquake is another one. How do we create earthquakes? How do human beings cause earthquakes? Yeah, it's hard to see that is caused by human behavior.
How does the Buddhism explain earthquakes?
What does Buddhism say about earthquakes?
Yeah.
Well, Buddhism doesn't deny that there's natural phenomena. So there are, molecules, atoms and molecules and so on, these physical materials that make up the world. And so Buddhism does accept the existence of those things, and that they operate by their own laws. Okay, so, but Buddhism does say that there is an interconnection, an interdependence between human beings and other living beings and the things that happen in nature, by way of karma. Okay, and this is something we were just discussing here in the Abbey, because we're going through a book by the Dalai Lama, which is called Samsara, Nirvana, and Buddha Nature. So it's kind of explaining the Four Noble Truths in great detail and how to get out of samsara. So there's a whole chapter in that book, chapter 6, which His Holiness is trying to explain, because Buddhism does say, everything comes about because of karma. The world and all the living beings and all the things that happen are the result of karma. But it isn't explained exactly how that works. The traditional Buddhist texts do not explain how everything comes about due to karma. So the Dalai Lama, I mean, he himself says he's a bit frustrated by that. And so he attempts to give an explanation based on his knowledge. I can actually send this to you, because I went through it. I remember when I was teaching cohort 1, and I don't remember which module, which semester it was, but they were interested in this. And so I extracted some portions from this book and we went through them in class. So I can send you the file that I used for them, and you can read that. So that's His Holiness Dalai Lama's explanation of how it's very interesting and maybe hard to understand, but anyway, it does answer your question about how does human activity and karma cause or affect our environment and lead to things like natural disasters. So yeah, anyway, that's just a brief answer, but I'll send you that. that okay? You can
Yeah.
read it? And if you have questions, but I mean, I don't have this knowledge that the Dalai Lama has. So he's able to bring in a lot of different knowledge from different sources and give this explanation. But I found it quite interesting. So anyway, this is one idea that some people have. The second one is others believe that suffering is random without causes. So some people say, oh, it just happens. There's no causes, no conditions. And I've heard that this is what some people say about the Big Bang. You know, the start of the universe was the Big Bang. And they say that before the Big Bang, there was nothing. Nothing existed. And then out of nowhere, out of nothing, the Big Bang happened, and then all the different worlds and stars and suns and everything came out of that, and then life came out of that, and then so on and so forth. So it just came from nothing, which I find, how can that possibly be? How can everything come from nothing without any causes? But some people believe that. And then the third point is some believe suffering is both permanent and temporary, meaning our unsatisfactory state cannot be overcome, even though there are temporary times of respite. So apparently this was a view of some of the non-Buddhist schools in India at the time of Buddha, and maybe nowadays as well. So they say that dukkha, suffering, is actually permanent in the sense that we can never be completely free of dukkha. We can never, totally eliminate dukkha, but there are certain times when it's not too bad, when we have some relief from dukkha, but we can never be completely free. I think this is maybe a view that some people have in the West, like maybe in Western psychology. I heard this about Freud, that, yeah, we can never be truly happy and truly free from suffering, but we can reduce our suffering. We can reduce it, but never be completely free of it. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Psychology, some believe that. Yeah.
That we have to manage with the reality. The human being have to manage with their reality.
Yeah, so suffering will always be
without
there.
Happiness.
Huh?
Without too much happiness.
Without too much happiness.
This is a kind of Freud, maybe.
Yeah. So that's just our human condition.
It's not very optimistic.
Sorry?
He's not very optimistic.
Not very optimistic. Yeah. Yeah. But then, I mean, it's understandable that people would think that way, because then they may say, well, where is an example of a human being who is completely free of suffering, who doesn't have any suffering? It's difficult to find anyone like that. So in Buddhism, well, we believe that it is possible. There are cases, like the Buddha himself was somebody who became free of suffering. And many of his followers also became completely free from suffering. And then some people may have doubt about that and say, yeah, but the Buddha died. The Buddha, he got sick and then he died. And so how can you say he's free of suffering? Well, we would say that the Buddha's body died. Yeah, his body, he had this human body, and that died. But in his mind, mentally, he didn't have any suffering. He didn't suffer when he died. His mind was free of suffering. So even if you have a body, a physical body, that is still subject to sickness and death, it doesn't mean your mind has to suffer. Your mind can still be at peace and free of suffering in spite of what's going on with your body. So this is what we believe, but we have to check it for ourselves if it's true.
Was another Buddha or only one?
No, we say there's many Buddhas. I mean, Buddha Shakyamuni was the one who lived in our world 2,500 years ago, and he gave these teachings that we are still studying. But before him, there were other Buddhas, and there will be other Buddhas in the future. And also, Buddhism says this isn't the only inhabited world in the universe. There are other worlds where there are beings, and there are also Buddhas in other worlds. So Buddhism says, yeah, there isn't only one Buddha for all of time, but there are other Buddhas. And there are also people who have attained the same state that the Buddha attained, even though they may not be advertising themselves like I am a Buddha, but they have the same realizations that the Buddha had.
How can we know it? The Buddha said, I finished what has been done, right? He said, I finished the samsara. And he claimed that but nobody else is saying that I'm enlightened. So
nobody else is, I didn't get the last part. Nobody else is what?
I think nobody is saying I'm enlightened.
Nobody else is saying they're enlightened. Well, actually, there are people who say they're enlightened, but I don't know if I believe. Yeah, it's a tricky thing. It's a tricky thing. I mean, what the Buddha, it's impossible to verify the Buddha's claim unless we ourselves investigate what he taught, practice it, and then reach the same state that he did. So that's the way to verify. And actually, you don't even have to go all the way to Buddhahood in order to have conviction in what the Buddha taught. It said that if you learn about emptiness, meditate on emptiness, you can get a insight, like a glimpse of emptiness. And when you have that experience, then you know for sure that it is possible to eliminate all the defilements, the afflictions, ignorance, and free yourself from suffering. I am not there yet. I haven't had that experience, but this is what they say.
May I think that there are, I think so, this is what I believe, that there are maybe in our world, there are many, even, I don't know in many, but even very simple people, even the one that clean the street in where I live in my neighborhood, that he achieved what the Buddha achieved, but he doesn't advertising it.
It's possible. Yeah.
Yes, I think so. You don't think so?
Yeah, I mean, they do say that Buddhas and Buddhas can manifest in our world, and they can be ordinary people, like you say, like a street sweeper, or a garbage collector, or a doctor, or a teacher. I mean, they can appear like ordinary people, ordinary beings, and they're not saying I'm a Buddha. They're not, radiating all light and everything. They just appear as ordinary people.
You believe on it? You think so?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's possible. I think it's possible. Yeah. And they come into our world to teach us, to help us wake up and realize there's more to life than just our normal activities and experiences. So I do think it's possible. Yeah.
I'm also.
Good. There's this funny, it just reminded me of this story. There was this man from Korea. He was actually a Zen master. He was quite a, wise and knowledgeable teacher of Zen. And he came to the United States. I don't remember what year it was. And he got a job working in a laundromat. You know what a laundromat is? It's filled with washing machines. Like people who don't have their own washing machine, they go to the laundromat and they use this, public washing machine. So he was working in this laundromat, just helping people wash their clothes and dry their clothes and fold their clothes and so on. And he was just dressed in an ordinary way. But some of the people who would go into this laundromat thought there's something special about this man. he's quite, I don't know, they just saw some really good qualities in him. They started talking to him and they found out he was actually a Buddhist master. He was very knowledgeable and very experienced in teachings and meditation. And so they asked him to start teaching. And so then eventually from there, he started meditation groups and so on. But originally he was just working in a laundromat. Yeah, so it's quite possible this person's
very symbolic.
Huh?
It's very symbolic that Buddha work in London.
That's right. Just like
after the ecstasy, laundry.
Laundry. Yeah.
After the ecstasy, laundry.
Yeah.
Listen, there is a book after the ecstasy,
The laundry. Yeah, that's right. Jack Kornfield wrote it. Yeah. So that means that even when we have realizations, we have these amazing experiences in our meditation, we still have to deal with ordinary life. We still have to do the laundry and do the cooking and do the shopping and so on. So how to take our insights, our realizations into our everyday life. Okay, so those are just some of the different ideas people have about suffering, the causes of suffering, but this is something we need to think about ourselves. We need to investigate ourselves. Where does suffering come from? And I mean, the Buddha gave an answer according to his experiences. Looking at his mind, he saw that the causes of suffering are these afflictions, these afflictive emotions, such as greed, hatred, jealousy, arrogance, and so forth. And this is empowering. So it actually says here, understanding that the causes of dukkha lie within our own mind enables us to feel empowered and take responsibility. We know that we have the ability to change our situation and create the causes for the happiness that we want. So if the causes of suffering lie outside of ourselves, like in a divine creator, there's not much we can do about it. We can't, change the creator. We can't get him to do what we want, to make happiness rather than suffering. But if we know that the causes lie within our own mind, that they are factors within ourself, within our mind, and that they are changeable, they are impermanent rather than permanent. This is very empowering because we can work on our mind. We can change our mind. And by doing that, we can lessen our suffering and eventually be free of suffering altogether. So this, of course, it's difficult to totally believe this, but just in my own experience, is learning about Buddhism and practicing Buddhism, I can see that my suffering has decreased. I can say that with 100% certainty. I have much less suffering now than I had when I was young and, before I started learning Buddhism. So I am completely convinced that it is possible. We can reduce our suffering by working with our mind, in particular, working with these afflictions. So we've come to the end of our time, but yeah, this is just kind of an introduction to this topic of the afflictions. And what I plan to do is to go into individual afflictions and what we can do about them, methods we can use to work on them. So you've probably heard some of this before, but it doesn't hurt to hear it again, to go through it again.